Arrogant millionaire with only 2 weeks to live sees his ex-fiancé waiting for the bus with twins who look exactly like him. Before anything else, if you're watching this from a place of struggle, know that you're not alone. Drop a heart below. The fluorescent lights in Dr. Harrison's office buzzed like angry wasps as Marcus Wellington stared at the MRI scans illuminating the wall, black and white images that spelled out his death sentence in clinical precision. 6 to 8 weeks, Dr. Harrison repeated, his voice distant and hollow. I'm sorry, Marcus. The glioblastoma is aggressive. We can discuss palliative care options. But Marcus had stopped listening. The words terminal brain cancer echoed in his skull as he stumbled from the office, his designer shoes clicking against the hospital's polished floors like a countdown timer. At 39, Marcus Wellington owned half of Manhattan's skyline. His real estate empire had made him wealthy beyond measure, but money couldn't buy him more time. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who built homes for others would never see his 40th birthday. His hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel of his Bentley, navigating through Brooklyn's evening traffic in a daze. The city blurred past him like a watercolor painting left in the rain. He should call his assistant, cancel meetings, arrange his affairs. Instead, he drove aimlessly, his mind struggling to process the impossible. Then he saw them. Standing at the Atlantic Avenue subway station, a woman with auburn hair held the hands of 2 identical boys. Something about their posture, the way they tilted their heads, made his breath catch in his throat. Marcus pulled over sharply, ignoring the honking cars behind him. His eyes fixed on the children, twin boys maybe 6 years old with dark hair and familiar brown eyes. His eyes, the woman turned slightly and his world shattered completely. Sarah. But older now, wearing simple clothes instead of designer gowns, her hair shorter than he remembered, and the name on her work badge read, Sarah Connor, not Sarah Mitchell, the woman he'd publicly humiliated 7 years ago. As the subway train approached, one of the boys looked directly at Marcus through the car window. The child's innocent gaze pierced through him like lightning, and Marcus knew with absolute certainty, these were his sons, the sons he never knew existed. Marcus abandoned his Bentley at the curb and rushed toward the subway platform, his heart hammering against his ribs. The evening crowd pushed past him as he fought his way through, desperate not to lose sight of them. Sarah, he called out, his voice cracking. She froze, her grip tightening protectively on the boy's hands. When she turned, her face had gone, pale as winter snow. The children looked up at their mother with confusion, then at the well-dressed stranger approaching them. You're mistaken, Sarah said quickly, pulling the boys closer. My name is Sarah Connor, I don't know you. But Marcus could see the truth in her terrified eyes. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. The boy on the left had his stubborn chin, while the other shared his thick eyebrows. They were perfect miniatures of the Wellington family features. Don't lie to me, Sarah, Marcus said, stepping closer, despite her obvious fear. A sharp pain shot through his skull, making him wince. Those are my sons. Mommy, who is this man? The smaller boy whispered, hiding behind Sarah's legs. No one important, Michael, she replied firmly, then looked back at Marcus with defiance, blazing in her green eyes. You need to leave us alone now. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus insisted, though another wave of pain made him lean against a nearby pillar for support. How old are they, Sarah? 6? 7? That means nothing, she cut him off sharply. You made your feelings about me perfectly clear 7 years ago. These boys don't know you and they don't need to know you. The braver twin, James, Marcus guessed, stepped forward slightly, studying Marcus with curious intensity. Are you sick, mister? You look pale. Marcus knelt down slowly, fighting the dizziness that threatened to overwhelm him. I'm fine, son. What's your name? Don't answer that, Sarah commanded, then addressed Marcus with ice in her voice. If you come near my children again, I'll call the police. They have a father figure who actually cares about them. The subway train roared into the station, drowning out Marcus's response. As Sarah hurried the boys toward the doors, James looked back one more time, his innocent eyes filled with questions that pierced Marcus's dying heart. That night, Marcus sat in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, his untouched whiskey reflecting the city lights. The pain in his head had intensified, but it was nothing compared to the agony in his chest. Those boys, James and Michael, were his flesh and blood, and he'd missed 6 years of their lives. His mind drifted back to that terrible night 7 years ago, the memory sharp as broken glass. The Metropolitan Club had been decorated with white roses and golden lights for their engagement party. 200 of New York's elite mingled in the grand ballroom, celebrating what the society pages called the merger of the century. Sarah had looked radiant in her emerald gown, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. She'd told him about the pregnancy just hours before the party. 8 weeks along, she'd whispered with tears of joy in her eyes. But then Marcus's business partner, Richard, had pulled him aside with devastating news. The Hendricks deal, their biggest acquisition, had fallen through because someone had leaked their bid. Richard's investigation pointed to Sarah's access to Marcus's computer. "She's been playing you, Marcus," Richard had said. "Classic gold digger move. Get pregnant, secure the fortune." The doubt had poisoned Marcus's mind like venom. When Sarah approached him with champagne, glowing with happiness, something dark had erupted from his chest. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus had announced, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom, "I'm afraid there's been a mistake. This engagement is off." Sarah's face had crumbled in real time. "Marcus, what are you—" "I won't be manipulated by a calculating gold digger," he'd declared, his words echoing off the marble walls. "Someone who would seduce me for my money and then sabotage my business." The gasps and whispers had filled the air like a swarm of locusts. Sarah had stood frozen, her hand still protectively over her stomach, tears streaming down her face as 200 witnesses watched her world collapse. 3 days later, Richard confessed. A jealous employee had leaked the information. But by then Sarah had vanished along with the child she'd lost from the trauma. Marcus's whiskey glass slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor. He'd destroyed the woman he loved and killed his own child with his cruelty. Now, with death racing toward him, he'd discovered that 2 children had somehow survived his devastating mistake. For 3 days, Marcus haunted the subway station like a ghost waiting. The headaches were getting worse, accompanied by moments where his vision blurred and his hands shook uncontrollably. But he couldn't give up, not when he'd found his sons. On Thursday evening, Sarah emerged from the station, with the boys, her jaw set with determination when she spotted him. "This is harassment," she said coldly, positioning herself between Marcus and the children. "5 minutes," Marcus pleaded, his voice hoarse. "Just let me talk to them for 5 minutes." James peered around his mother with curious eyes while Michael clutched her hand tighter, his small face etched with anxiety. "Please, Mommy," James whispered. He seemed sad. Sarah's resolve wavered for a moment, then hardened again. "Fine. 5 minutes. But I stay right here, and if either of my boys feels uncomfortable, you leave immediately." Marcus knelt carefully, fighting a wave of dizziness. "Hi, boys. I'm Marcus. I knew your mom a long time ago." "Are you the man who made Mommy cry?" Michael asked suddenly, his voice barely audible. The innocent question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He glanced at Sarah, whose eyes were filled with old pain. "Yes," Marcus admitted quietly. "I hurt your mommy very badly, and I'm sorry for that." James stepped forward protectively. "Then why should we talk to you? Mommy says people who hurt others aren't good people." "Because sometimes," Marcus said, struggling to find words a 6-year-old could understand, "people make terrible mistakes, and sometimes they spend the rest of their lives trying to make up for those mistakes." Michael shook his head violently. "We don't need a daddy. We have Mommy, and she takes care of us." "Time's up," Sarah announced, noting Marcus's pale complexion and the way he gripped the bench for support. "Boys, say goodbye." "Goodbye," James said politely, but Michael just stared at the ground. As they walked away, Marcus called out desperately, "I just want to know you. Please." Sarah turned back, her expression softening slightly at his obvious desperation. "Supervised visits only, 1 hour twice a week. Riverside Park near the playground. And Marcus?" Her voice grew stern. "See a doctor, you look terrible." Marcus watched them disappear into the crowd, hope and despair warring in his chest. He had permission to see his sons, but time was running out faster than sand through an hourglass. Marcus hired a private investigator within hours of that first supervised visit. The manila folder that arrived 3 days later contained revelations that made his terminal diagnosis seem like a minor inconvenience. Sarah Connor, legally changed from Sarah Mitchell, worked 3 jobs. Mornings at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital as a radiology technician, afternoons cleaning offices downtown, and weekends at a local diner. Her monthly income barely covered rent for their cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where sirens wailed through the night. But the most devastating discovery came in a school report tucked deep in the file. Michael had severe dyslexia. The recommended therapy cost $300 per week, money Sarah simply didn't have. The boy was falling further behind, his confidence crumbling with each failed reading attempt. Marcus studied Michael's school photo, seeing his own childhood struggles reflected in those confused brown eyes. He'd overcome his learning difficulties with expensive tutors and specialized programs. His son had no such luxury. The final revelation came when Marcus followed them to the park for their second supervised visit. He arrived early, hiding behind a tree to observe them naturally. "Tell us about Daddy again," James was saying to Sarah as they sat on a bench. Sarah's voice was gentle but sad. "Your father was a good man who got very sick when you were babies. He went to heaven before you could meet him." Marcus gripped the tree bark until his knuckles went white. She'd told them he was dead. In their innocent minds, they were meeting a stranger, not their father. "Do you think Daddy can see us from heaven?" Michael asked, struggling to pronounce the words correctly. "I'm sure he can, sweetheart. And I know he loves you both very much." The irony was suffocating. Marcus was dying, but in his son's minds he'd been dead for 6 years. He watched Michael struggle to read a picture book, seeing the frustration and embarrassment cloud the boy's face when he stumbled over simple words. As Sarah spotted him and waved him over, Marcus realized the magnitude of his task. He didn't just need to win his sons' hearts. He needed to resurrect himself from the dead. And he had to do it while his own body betrayed him, one failing synapse at a time. The headache that hit him as he walked toward his family was so intense he nearly collapsed. Marcus steadied himself against a park bench, forcing a smile as Sarah watched him with growing concern. The headache felt like molten metal behind his eyes, but he couldn't let his son see weakness, not yet. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked quietly, while the boys played on the swings nearby. "Just tired," Marcus lied, sitting down heavily. "Long day at the office." Over the following weeks, their twice-weekly meetings became a delicate dance of small progress and painful setbacks. Marcus learned to plan activities around his increasing limitations. No more walking tours or physical games. Instead, he brought coloring books, simple puzzles, and picture books that Michael could manage without frustration. James was the first to crack. During their 4th meeting, he approached Marcus's bench with cautious curiosity. "Why do you always sit down so much?" the boy asked with typical 6-year-old directness. "These old bones get tired easily," Marcus replied, grateful for an excuse that wasn't entirely false. "You're not that old," James observed, then surprised Marcus by sitting beside him. "My friend Tommy's dad is older than you and he plays soccer with us." Marcus's chest tightened. "Maybe we could read a story instead." Meanwhile, Michael remained steadfastly distant, often hiding behind Sarah or refusing to speak directly to Marcus. His anxiety seemed to spike whenever Marcus moved too quickly or when his coordination faltered, which was happening more frequently. "He's very sensitive," Sarah explained one afternoon as Marcus struggled to open a juice box with trembling fingers. "Changes upset him, new people especially." "I understand," Marcus said. though his heart ached watching Michael retreat to the far side of the playground whenever he approached. By the 6th week, James had begun calling him Mr. Marcus, and would occasionally share playground gossip or show off drawings from school. But Michael continued to watch from afar, his dark eyes filled with the same wariness that haunted Sarah's face. Marcus knew time was running out. The coordination problems were becoming impossible to hide, and yesterday he'd forgotten James's name mid-conversation. Soon even these precious stolen hours would be beyond his failing grasp. 3 weeks later, Sarah called Marcus with panic in her voice. "Michael's having problems at school. There's an emergency meeting with his teacher. Would you come? He might need all the support he can get." Marcus found himself in the cramped classroom of PS 321, sitting beside Sarah on child-sized plastic chairs. His vision kept blurring, and he had to grip the tiny desk to stay focused as Mrs. Rodriguez explained the situation. Michael had a complete breakdown during reading time, the teacher said gently. He threw his book across the room and hid under his desk crying. He kept saying he was too stupid and that everyone was laughing at him. Through the classroom window, Marcus could see Michael sitting alone in the principal's office, his small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The sight made his chest constrict with pain that had nothing to do with his tumor. "Where is he now?" Marcus asked, struggling to stand. Sarah noticed how he grabbed the chair for support, her brow furrowing with concern. "The counselor is with him, but he won't speak to anyone," Mrs. Rodriguez replied. Without thinking, Marcus walked toward the office, his gait slightly unsteady. Sarah followed closely, ready to catch him if he stumbled. Through the glass door, they could see Michael curled in a ball on a beanbag chair, tears streaming down his face. Marcus knocked softly and entered. "Hey, buddy." Michael looked up, surprised to see him. "Mr. Marcus, why are you here?" "Because sometimes," Marcus said, sitting carefully on the floor beside the beanbag, "people who care about each other show up when things get tough." "I can't read good," Michael whispered, his voice breaking. "All the other kids think I'm dumb." Marcus's heart shattered. "You know what? I couldn't read well when I was your age either. The letters used to dance around on the page like they were playing tricks on me." Michael's eyes widened. "Really? Really? But you know what I learned? Being different isn't the same as being dumb. Your brain just works in a special way." For the first time since Marcus had met him, Michael scooted closer. "Did kids laugh at you too?" "Sometimes. But I had help, and you will too." When Michael finally allowed Marcus to hold him while he cried, Sarah watched from the doorway with tears in her eyes, and growing alarm at Marcus's obvious confusion about which hallway led back to the parking lot. The drive home from Michael's school was tense. Sarah sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's Bentley, her trained eye cataloging every symptom she'd been unconsciously noting for weeks. "Pull over," she said suddenly as Marcus struggled to remember which exit led to Brooklyn. "I'm fine," Marcus insisted, though sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool autumn air. "Marcus, I work in radiology. I see brain scans every day." Her voice was clinical now, stripped of emotion. "The headaches, the coordination issues, the memory lapses, the way you grip things for balance, these aren't stress symptoms." Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're overreacting. Stop the car. Now." He pulled into a gas station, his movements jerky and uncertain. Sarah turned to face him fully, her green eyes sharp with professional assessment. "Persistent cephalgia, motor coordination dysfunction, episodic confusion," she rattled off in medical terminology. "How long have you been experiencing neurological symptoms?" "Sarah, please. How long?" Her voice cut through his protests like a scalpel. Marcus closed his eyes, defeated. "A few months. Maybe longer." Jesus Christ. Sarah's clinical facade cracked slightly. "You've been around my children with an undiagnosed neurological condition? What if you'd had a seizure? What if you'd collapsed while holding Michael? It's not that serious." Bullshit. Sarah's training kicked in full force. Gradual onset neurological decline in a 39-year-old male points to several possibilities, none of them good. Tumor, degenerative disease, autoimmune condition. "Stop," Marcus whispered. You will see a neurologist within 48 hours, Sarah declared, her voice brooking no argument. You'll get a complete workup, MRI, blood panels, everything. And until you do, you don't go near James and Michael. You can't keep them from me. Watch me. Sarah's eyes blazed with protective fury. I won't let you traumatize my sons by collapsing in front of them. Get the tests, Marcus. Find out what's wrong. Then we'll talk. As she stormed out of the car, calling a cab from her phone, Marcus realized his time was running out faster than he'd anticipated. Sarah's medical instincts would eventually lead her to the truth. The question was, would she let him see his sons once she knew he was dying? 2 days later, Marcus sat in the same neurologist's office where his world had first collapsed, watching Sarah study his MRI films with the intensity of a detective examining crime scene evidence. Dr. Harrison had reluctantly agreed to include her in the consultation, given her medical background and relationship to the patient. The scans glowed against the viewing box like malevolent stars. Sarah's face went through a spectrum of emotions: professional curiosity, growing alarm, and finally, devastating comprehension. Glioblastoma multiforme, she whispered, tracing the tumor's irregular borders with her finger. Stage 4. How long has he known? Dr. Harrison glanced at Marcus, who sat slumped in his chair like a condemned man. 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Sarah spun around, her eyes blazing with fury. You've known you were dying for 6 weeks, and you didn't tell me? Sarah, please, please, nothing. Her voice cracked like a whip. I've been letting you spend time with my children while you've been lying to my face about having terminal brain cancer. Marcus tried to stand, but his coordination betrayed him and he nearly fell back into the chair. I just wanted time with them. You needed to manipulate me. Sarah's professional composure shattered completely. 6 to 8 weeks prognosis. That means you have maybe 2 weeks left, doesn't it, Dr. Harrison? The neurologist nodded grimly. The tumor has grown significantly since the initial diagnosis. We're looking at days to weeks now. Sarah pressed her hands against her temples, pacing the small office like a caged animal. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. You let me think you were just stressed or overworked while your brain was literally dying. I was terrified you'd cut me off completely, Marcus admitted, his voice barely audible. I've already lost 7 years with them. I couldn't lose what little time I had left. Sarah stopped pacing, her chest heaving with emotion. For a long moment she stared at the man who had once destroyed her life and was now dying in front of her eyes. If you want any remaining time with James and Michael, she said finally, her voice deadly calm, you will never lie to me again, about anything. I decide how we handle this with the boys, I decide when we tell them, and I decide how much time you get. Understood? Marcus nodded desperately. Understood. And Marcus? Sarah's green eyes were filled with tears. She refused to shed. I'm sorry you're dying, but I will not let you destroy my children the way you destroyed me. Sarah's new rules were strict as military protocol. Visits were reduced to 1 hour, twice a week, always in her apartment where Marcus could rest if needed. No more park meetings, his balance had become too unreliable. Boys, Sarah announced on their first supervised indoor visit, Marcus is going to spend some quiet time with you. He's been feeling sick lately, so we need to keep activities calm. James, now 8 weeks into knowing Marcus, had developed a protective streak. Are you going to be okay, Marcus, Daddy? He asked, the hybrid title slipping out naturally. Marcus's heart nearly stopped. Marcus, Daddy? Is that okay? James asked uncertainly. You're not like a regular daddy, but you're not just Marcus either. It's perfect, Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Michael remained curled in the corner with his picture books, stealing glances but maintaining his distance. The boy's anxiety seemed to spike whenever Marcus moved too slowly or paused mid-sentence, which was happening more frequently. Marcus had adapted their activities around his limitations. Board games replaced physical play. Reading together replaced walks. He'd set up a small video camera in the corner, Sarah's permission granted after he'd explained his purpose. James, can you look at the camera for a minute? Marcus asked during their third visit. Why? I want to record some messages for you, for when you're older, like when you graduate high school, or get married, or have kids of your own. James frowned, with 6-year-old logic. Can't you just tell me then? Sarah intervened gently. Marcus wants to make sure his words are saved forever, sweetie. Between visits, Marcus spent his remaining energy writing detailed letters for each boy. Instructions for James about being a big brother, encouragement for Michael about his reading struggles, stories about the Wellington family history they'd never learned. During their fourth visit, Marcus's speech began slurring slightly. James noticed immediately, Marcus, Daddy, you sound funny. Sometimes my mouth doesn't work as well as it used to. Marcus explained simply, like Michael with reading? Exactly like that. From his corner, Michael looked up for the first time that day, a flicker of understanding crossing his young face. The following Tuesday brought unexpected rain, trapping them all inside Sarah's small living room. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his movements now noticeably slower and more deliberate. The tumor was progressing rapidly. His speech had become more labored and his left hand trembled almost constantly. I brought something special today, Marcus announced, pulling out a large box of art supplies from his bag with Sarah's help. James immediately rushed over, but Michael remained on the couch, clutching his worn stuffed elephant. Over the past weeks, the boy had begun stealing longer glances at Marcus, his curiosity clearly warring with his anxiety. These are professional artist pencils, Marcus explained to James, his words slightly slurred but understandable. The kind real artists use. Can I try them? James asked eagerly. Of course, that's why I brought them. As James began sketching enthusiastically, Marcus noticed Michael had crept closer, his dark eyes fixed on the colored pencils with unmistakable longing. Michael, Marcus said softly, would you like to draw something? The boy shook his head, quickly but didn't retreat to the couch. You know, Marcus continued, his voice patient despite the effort speech required. When I was your age, I loved to draw. My hands worked better with pictures than with words. Michael's grip on his elephant loosened slightly. Really? Really? Words were hard for me too. But pictures made sense. Sarah watched from the kitchen doorway, ready to intervene, if needed, but something in Marcus's tone kept her silent. I can't draw good, Michael whispered, moving another step closer. I bet you can, Marcus said, sliding a fresh sheet of paper across the table. Want to try together? For the first time in 2 months, Michael approached Marcus willingly. He climbed onto the chair beside him, his small body radiating nervous energy. What should we draw? Marcus asked. I don't know, Michael said, picking up a green pencil with careful reverence. How about a tree? Everyone can draw a tree. As they worked side by side, Marcus's trembling hand guided Michael's steady one. The silence was comfortable, broken only by the gentle scratch of pencils on paper and the rain against the windows. Marcus, Michael said suddenly, not looking up from his drawing. Yes, buddy? Mommy told us our daddy died before we were born. Marcus's pencil stopped moving. Sarah tensed in the doorway, but Marcus caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. That's what she told you, Marcus confirmed carefully. But you're here now. Michael's voice was thoughtful, not accusatory. Did you come back from heaven? The innocent question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He glanced at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly, permission to navigate this minefield himself. Michael, Marcus said slowly, choosing his words with the precision of a surgeon. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad mistakes. Sometimes they hurt the people they love so badly that they have to go away. Like a timeout? Sort of. But a very long timeout. Michael continued coloring, processing this information with 6-year-old logic. Were you in timeout because you hurt Mommy? Yes, Marcus whispered. I hurt your mommy very, very badly, and I've been sorry about it every single day since. But you came back. I came back because I wanted to meet you and James, because even though I made terrible mistakes, I never stopped loving you. Michael set down his pencil and looked directly at Marcus for the first time. Do you love us even though we didn't know you? Marcus's vision blurred with tears he fought to control. I love you both more than all the stars in the sky. More than I ever knew it was possible to love anyone. Even though I can't read good? Especially because you're exactly perfect. The way you are. Michael studied Marcus's face with the intensity only children possessed. Are you going to have to go back to heaven soon? The question hung in the air like a sword. Marcus looked at Sarah, who had tears streaming down her face, then back at his son. I might have to, Marcus admitted. But before I do, I want you to know something very important. Are you listening? Michael nodded solemnly. You are smart and kind and brave. You are going to do amazing things in your life, and even if I can't be here to see them all, I will always, always be proud of you. For a moment, they sat in complete silence. Then, to everyone's amazement, Michael slowly scooted his chair closer to Marcus. Can I have a hug? The boy asked, quietly. Marcus's heart nearly exploded with joy and grief. I would love that more than anything. When Michael's small arms wrapped around his neck, Marcus felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. For the first time since his diagnosis, he wasn't thinking about death or lost time or regrets. He was simply a father, holding his son, complete in that perfect moment. The Wellington estate in Greenwich sat like a monument to old money, its Georgian columns casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. Marcus gripped the steering wheel of his Bentley with both hands, Sarah beside him watching his every movement with medical precision. In the back seat, James and Michael pressed their faces against the windows in wonder. This is where you used to live? James asked in amazement. A long time ago, Marcus replied, his speech more labored than yesterday. The tumor was advancing aggressively. He'd lost partial vision in his left eye just that morning. Marcus's parents, Eleanor and Charles Wellington III, stood rigid on the front steps like marble statues. At 73 and 75 respectively, they epitomized Connecticut aristocracy, dignified, controlled, and utterly unprepared for the bombshell their dying son was about to drop. Mother, father, Marcus said as they approached, leaning heavily on Sarah's arm. I'd like you to meet your grandsons. Eleanor's composed facade cracked immediately. Marcus, what are you talking about? James and Michael, he continued, gently urging the boys forward. They're 6 years old. They're mine. Charles studied the children with the sharp eye of a man accustomed to evaluating bloodlines. The Wellington features were unmistakable. The strong jawline, the intelligent brown eyes, the way both boys carried themselves with unconscious confidence. This is impossible, Eleanor whispered. You never mentioned. There's a lot I never mentioned, Marcus interrupted, his voice growing weaker. But we don't have time for long explanations. I'm dying and these boys need family. The next hour was a delicate dance of shock, denial, and gradual acceptance. Eleanor, despite her initial bewilderment, found herself drawn to James's precocious questions about the family portraits lining the walls. Charles, a pragmatist at heart, was already calculating the legal implications of posthumous paternity claims. The legal complexities are staggering, Charles admitted privately to Marcus and Sarah in his study. Without established paternity, without your name on birth certificates. That's why I brought this, Marcus said, producing a thick legal document. My lawyer has been working around the clock. Paternity recognition through my will, with DNA verification to follow. Everything's arranged. Sarah watched this unfold with mixed emotions. Part of her was grateful for the financial security these people could provide her boys. Another part resented how easily wealth could solve problems that had tormented her for years. The trust funds are structured for long-term growth, Marcus's attorney David Chen explained as he joined them. Education expenses covered through graduate school, Michael's therapy fully funded, housing allowances that adjust with inflation. You've thought of everything, Sarah said quietly. Marcus turned to her with eyes that held a lifetime of regret. I'm trying to. I can't give them their childhood back, but I can give them their future. Meanwhile, in the garden, something magical was happening. Eleanor had overcome her initial shock and was showing the boys her prized rose garden. James peppered her with questions about plant names and growing seasons, while Michael, emboldened by yesterday's breakthrough with Marcus, actually spoke directly to his grandfather about the koi pond. They have spirit, Charles observed to Marcus through the window. The boy with the reading challenge is Michael. He reminds me of you at that age. Same determination hiding behind the uncertainty. He's going to be remarkable, Marcus said, his words slurring more noticeably. They both are. By evening, the legal documents were signed, witnessed, and notarized. DNA samples were collected for posthumous verification, a morbid but necessary step. The boys would inherit not just money, but a legacy, a family name, and grandparents who were already showing signs of fierce protective love. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor pulled Sarah aside. I know we've had no relationship, the older woman said carefully. And I know my son hurt you terribly, but those boys, they're Wellingtons now. That means something in this family. What does it mean? Sarah asked. It means they'll never want for anything. Education, opportunities, support, whatever they need, and it means your family too, whether you like it or not. During the drive back to Brooklyn, James was full of excited chatter about his new grandparents, while Michael sat quietly processing the day's events. Marcus could barely keep his eyes open, the effort of the day having drained what little energy remained. Marcus, Daddy? Michael said softly as they pulled into Sarah's neighborhood. Yes, buddy? Are Grandma Eleanor and Grandpa Charles going to take care of us when you go to heaven? The question pierced Marcus's heart. They're going to help take care of you, but Mommy will always be your most important person. Good, Michael said with 6-year-old finality. I like them, but I love Mommy best. As Sarah helped Marcus from the car, his legs nearly gave out completely. Time was running out faster than anyone had anticipated. 2 weeks after the Wellington estate visit, Marcus could no longer walk unassisted. The wheelchair Sarah had reluctantly agreed to rent sat in her living room like an unwelcome guest, its chrome rails catching the afternoon light that filtered through her small windows. Boys, Marcus is here, Sarah called gently, helping him transfer from the car to the wheelchair with practiced efficiency. Her radiology training had taught her basic patient care, but nothing had prepared her for watching the father of her children fade before her eyes. James ran to greet them, but stopped short when he saw the wheelchair. His young face cycled through confusion, concern, and a heartbreaking attempt at normalcy. Hi, Marcus, Daddy, he said carefully. How come you need that chair? My legs. They don't work so good anymore, Marcus managed, his speech now significantly impaired. The simple sentence required tremendous effort, and Sarah could see exhaustion already creeping across his features. Michael appeared in the doorway, his stuffed elephant clutched tightly against his chest. Since their breakthrough 3 weeks ago, he'd become more affectionate with Marcus, but the wheelchair clearly frightened him. Is it gonna hurt you? Michael whispered, approaching slowly. No, buddy. It helps me. Like glasses help people see better. Sarah had established new protocols. 30-minute visits maximum, constant supervision, and immediate termination if Marcus showed signs of confusion or distress. She'd also moved all breakable items out of reach after Marcus had knocked over a lamp during his last visit, his spatial awareness increasingly compromised. What should we do today? James asked, settling cross-legged on the floor beside the wheelchair. Marcus reached into the bag hanging from his chair's armrest, his movements slow and deliberate. I brought video camera, he said, each word requiring visible effort. Like making movies? James's eyes lit up with excitement. Sort of. Want to? Help me record. Special messages? Sarah positioned the camera on its tripod while Marcus gathered his thoughts. She'd discussed this plan with him yesterday. Final video messages for each boy to receive at important life milestones. Graduations, weddings, the birth of their own children. Words from beyond the grave to guide them through moments he'd never witness. James first, Marcus said, gesturing for his son to sit beside the wheelchair. The recording session was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Marcus, despite his deteriorating condition, managed to summon remarkable clarity for his elder son. James, if you're watching this, you're probably graduating high school, Marcus began, his words carefully paced. I want you to know how proud I am. You were always the brave one, the protector. Take care of Michael, but remember, you don't have to carry the whole world. James sat perfectly still, understanding the gravity of the moment even if he couldn't fully comprehend its permanence. Remember that being smart isn't about having all the answers, it's about asking the right questions. And James, your mommy, she's the strongest person I ever knew. Listen to her. When it was Michael's turn, the boy climbed carefully onto Marcus's lap, no longer afraid of the wheelchair. Michael, my sweet boy, Marcus whispered into the camera, his voice growing weaker. If you're watching this, maybe you're struggling with reading again. I want you to know, different doesn't mean broken. Your brain, it works in beautiful ways. Michael snuggled closer, sensing something profound in his father's tone. You feel things deeply. That's a gift. The world needs people who see with their hearts. And Michael? Those words that are hard now. Someday you'll find the ones that matter most. Halfway through Michael's recording, Marcus's speech became more labored. Sarah noticed his left eye beginning to drift, a sign the tumor was affecting his motor control centers. Maybe we should stop, Sarah suggested gently. No, Marcus insisted with surprising firmness. Need to finish. But as he tried to continue, his words became jumbled, then stopped altogether. For a terrifying moment, he stared blankly at the camera, confusion clouding his features. Marcus. Sarah moved closer, her hand on his shoulder. Where? Marcus looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time. James jumped up, fear flashing across his young face. What's wrong with Marcus, Daddy? Sometimes his brain gets confused, Sarah explained calmly, though her heart was racing. Just like sometimes computers freeze up. Within minutes, Marcus's clarity returned, but the episode had shaken everyone. Michael had retreated to his corner while James hovered protectively nearby. I'm okay, Marcus assured them, though his voice was barely above a whisper. Just need to rest now. As Sarah helped him back to the car, Marcus gripped her hand with surprising strength. How much longer? She asked quietly. Dr. Harrison thinks. Maybe a week. 2 at most. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of decisions she'd never imagined having to make. Do you want to tell them? Not yet. Let them. Remember me talking, not just dying. That night, after the boys were asleep, Sarah played back the video recordings. Marcus's deterioration was visible even within the 30-minute span, his speech progressively more labored, his coordination failing in real time. But his love for his sons blazed through every stumbled word, every labored breath. These imperfect, heartbreaking recordings would be the last gifts he could give them. The call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Thursday. Sarah jolted awake to her phone's insistent buzzing, immediately knowing what it meant. She'd been expecting this call for days, watching Marcus deteriorate with each visit until yesterday, when he could barely keep his eyes open for more than a few minutes. Ms. Connor, this is Dr. Harrison at Mount Sinai. Marcus Wellington asked me to call you. It's time. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling a strange mixture of grief and relief. How long? Hours, maybe a day or 2 at most. He's been asking for the boys. The hospital room felt like a sanctuary of hushed reverence when Sarah arrived with James and Michael that afternoon. Marcus lay propped against white pillows, his once powerful frame now frail and diminished. The man who had commanded boardrooms and built skyscrapers could barely lift his head, but his eyes brightened the moment he saw his sons. There are my boys, he whispered, his voice barely audible above the soft beeping of monitors. James approached the bed first, his 8-year-old face serious with understanding beyond his years. Hi, Marcus, Daddy. Are you very sick? Very sick, Marcus confirmed gently. But not in pain, just tired. Michael hung back initially, overwhelmed by the hospital's sterile environment and the tangle of wires connected to Marcus. Sarah lifted him carefully, settling him on the chair beside the bed where he could see his father without being frightened by the medical equipment. "Is this where you're going to go to heaven from?" Michael asked with the direct honesty only children possessed. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Maybe, buddy, but right now, I'm just happy you're here." Over the next hour, they talked in simple, gentle phrases. Marcus asked about school, about their favorite games, about anything that kept his sons talking. His speech was